If you're selling your home for the first time, or the first time in a long time, you've probably already asked yourself some version of this. What am I actually getting myself into? Selling your home for the first time, or if it's been a while, it comes with its own kind of uncertainty. What we're going to cover is what happens when a home goes on the market. Not the checklist version, but the part that shapes everything else. How buyers think, why the first few weeks matter more than most sellers realize, and how to think about the pricing decision before you're sitting across from anyone asking you to commit to a number. You're doing this for the first time or coming back to it after 10 or 20 years. This is the picture worth having before anything else happens. I'm Justin Sinkowski, real estate agent with Royal LePage Prime Real Estate, serving in Winnipeg and the Interlake communities like Selkirk, Stonewall, Gimli, Dulon, Marburg, and Riverton. Everything starts with the same thing, a clear picture of what you're actually walking into. Let me start with something that applies whether you've never done this before or haven't done it in 20 or 30 years. The market is not the same as it was. 20 or 30 years ago, selling a home was a slower process. Listings moved through newspapers, open houses. What buyers physically had to show up to know what was available. There was more time on both sides. That's not how it works now. Today, the moment your listing goes live, serious buyers see it. They've been watching on their phones. They've been already comparing it to everything else in the price range. They've looked at the photos, assessed the price, often before anyone picks up the phone to book a showing. By the time a buyer walks through the door, they've already done most of the decision making. The showing confirms what they've already started to believe. It's not the beginning of the process for them, it's closer to the end. And what this means is how your home enters the market and what it looks like on day one and where it's priced. All of that is doing more work than most sellers realize. There's a window at the start of every listing, roughly the first 7 to 21 days after your home lists, and sometimes longer at higher price points. That's when the most motivated buyers are paying the closest attention. These are the buyers who've been pre-approved, who know what they want, and have been watching the market and waiting for the right home to appear. When yours goes live, they see it immediately. And if it's priced and presented well, they'll move quickly. The buyers who engage after that window tend to be earlier in their search, still figuring out what they want, less certain, often looking for more flexibility on price because they've watched the home sit. This is the part that catches a lot of first-time sellers off guard. They assume there's time to test things out, but they can always adjust later if they need. And yes, technically they can. However, adjusting later is a different conversation than getting it right from the start. Price reduction after week 5 or 6 carries a different weight than a home that generates interest on day 1. The goal going in is to use that window well, and that starts with understanding that it's there. Here's something worth naming before we go any further. There's something different about putting a number on a place you've lived in. Your home carries years of decisions, things that have happened there, things you've built, and the number you're putting on it doesn't feel like a transaction. And for a lot of sellers, it shouldn't. Here are a few things that rarely get said out loud, but are almost always underneath a lot of these conversations. The feeling that accepting less than you hoped feels like taking a loss. The worry that you won't actually know whether you're making the right decision until it's too late to change it. The sense that once you're in this process, you're just along for the ride. And that makes complete sense given what's at stake. Here's what's worth knowing. Buyers don't see your home the way you do. They're not discounting your memories or your time. They're simply looking at their future and not your past. They're thinking about whether this is the right fit for where they're going. That doesn't mean what you put into your home doesn't matter. It means the way it matters is through how the home shows, how it's presented, how it's priced, how it compares to other options they're considering. Knowing this going in doesn't make the emotional layer disappear. It does make things feel less confusing when the feelings show up, and they usually do at some point in the process. Now, let's talk about the number. Most sellers come in with a figure already in their head. Sometimes it came from looking at what sold nearby, sometimes it's a neighbor story, sometimes it's from a number they've been holding on to for years. The number isn't the problem. The question is what that number is actually doing once it hits the market. Before a home goes live, there's a lot you can estimate. Comparable sales, recent activity in the price range, what buyers are doing right now. All of that gives you a realistic picture of where you're likely to land. The exact number, though, no one can tell you with certainty before the market responds. Not me, not an algorithm, not a comparable sale from last month. The market determines value, and it speaks through buyer activity. The listing price may not be the answer to the question, what is my home worth? It's the beginning of a conversation with the market, and how that conversation starts Which buyers see your home, whether they feel urgency, whether they show up at the same time, determines what kind of leverage you have when offers arrive. A home that enters the market positioned where the most motivated buyers actively looking creates engagement. It creates the condition for competition. It gives you options. A home that enters above that range tends to generate silence. Qualified buyers see it, do the math, and move on. The listing sits, and the window we talked about earlier, that opening period when the most motivated buyers are watching, starts to close. The strategy isn't to predict the highest number the market might possibly accept. The strategy is to enter in a way that gives you the best chance to finding out what the market is actually willing to do. Whether you're doing this for the first time or coming back to it after 20 years, the process isn't as unpredictable as it can feel from the outside. There's a logic to how the market works, how the buyers behave, and how the pricing decision shapes everything that follows. Understanding that logic before you're in the middle of it changes how the whole thing feels. You don't have to figure this out as you go. You can walk into this process with a clearer picture of what's actually happening and make decisions from that place instead of reacting to things as they show up. I've put together a free guide specifically for sellers doing this for the first time or the first time in a long time. It walks through the process, the decisions, what to think about before you list, and in more detail than we covered today. The link is below in the description. If this gave you a clear picture of what you're stepping into, subscribe. There's a lot more coming for sellers and buyers in both Winnipeg and the Interlake markets who want to understand the process before they're in it. Drop a comment below with the biggest question you have going into this.